Yes. Oh. Hello, everybody, and I can do this, sorry. Hello, everybody. My name's Jane Bryan. I'm the Director of Alumni Affairs, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the Bard College Awards. The rules on the Bard College Awards are you can take your mask off when you're at the podium or if you have something to say. I just want to start by welcoming everybody and welcoming everyone watching at home. I know we have people all over the world watching some of our awardees and honorees get their awards from Bard. And this event always reminds me how very proud I am to be a Bardian, and I think this year we've all needed community, and this is a really good community to be part of. I want to start off by, usually this event is chaired by the President of the Board of Governors, and our President is coming to us remotely from Las Plasitas, I think, in New Mexico. And I'm going to introduce him first, and his name's Casey Sirota, and he's from the class of 2004. So if we would look at our screens, you will see Casey. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Hello, and welcome to the Bard College Awards. I'm Casey Sirota, President of the Bard College Alumni Association Board of Governors. This awards ceremony is hosted by the Board of Governors, and the awardees are nominated and chosen by the board as the elected representation of the Bard College Alumni Association, and led by our nominations committee, co-chaired by Sonia Hood from the class of 1990 and Zubeida Ula Eilenberg, class of 1997. We're so thrilled that the Bard Awards ceremony can take place in the Fisher Center for the Performing Arts this year. Last year, as you know, commencement and this awards ceremony were delayed from May into August. But with the improving health situation and more people becoming fully vaccinated, it is great to have steps towards in-person events. And we look forward to the time, hopefully very soon, when we can have full capacity events with all of our Bardian family present. I wish I could be there in person with you this year, but with fingers and toes crossed, next year will bring us all back together. So for now, I join you from my home in, as Jane said, Placitas, New Mexico. Today, we celebrate some of the best and brightest of our alumni community. We also warmly welcome our distinguished guests whom we will be honoring. This has been an exceptional year for Bard College. The faculty and staff navigated challenging circumstances in reopening to in-person learning on campus. They managed to do so while keeping the community of students and employees of the college safe with minimal exposure events to the coronavirus. The administration initiated the President's Commission on Racial Equity and Justice in response to calls from students, faculty, staff, and alumni to conduct an audit of the college and recommend a plan of action for a stronger and more inclusive Bard. And in helping to solidify and ensure the financial future of the college, all of the incredible work that it does from the campus in Annandale to its international programs, the early colleges, BPI, the micro colleges and graduate programs, we are thrilled with the recent news of the $500 million challenge grant from the Open Society Foundations and the Soros families. We have to thank the trustees of the college and other donors who at this point have raised more than $300 million of that challenge grant on behalf of the Alumni Association. We look forward to assisting in completing the match for the future of the college. For many watching online tonight, this might be the first time you've joined us for the Bard College Awards. We would love to have you join us next year at the Fisher Center in person, particularly those members of the classes of 2020 and 2021 who can actually come back and join in person. It's a lovely event, and we learned so much about the great successes Bardians go on to achieve in the world and the connections we make. My congratulations to all of our alumni who plan to celebrate their reunions this year. We look forward to the online reunion program on June 12th with special guests, faculty tours, group chats, activities. Thank you for all of the ways you support Bard, and in particular for your class gifts. Mark your calendars for next May, Memorial Day weekend, when we can all celebrate together in Annandale with the reunion classes of 2022. I look forward to welcoming you back then. Bard is the place where I truly learned to think for myself, to analyze, research, and stand up for what's right. The awardees we recognize here today embody the spirit of this college and our mission of being rooted in social justice. Today's ceremony recognizes a number of alumni, staff, and friends of the college who've done remarkable things. I will let our presenters and nominators fill you in about our award recipients this evening. I also have to thank Leon, Jane, Deborah, and all of the Office of Development and Alumni Affairs staff for everything that they've done all year and for helping to put this event together. I also want to extend my thanks to the alumni volunteers for helping to mentor students and assist career development as Bardians go out into the world. And finally, I have to thank Molly Makel, class of 2003, the Vice President of the Board of Governors, for assisting me today by presenting these awards with you live in person in Annandale. Thank you all for tuning in to help us celebrate our honorees.
Thank you very much, Casey. And I now turn the podium over to the President of Bard College, Leon Botstein.
Is that me? Oh, really? I want to welcome everyone to this ceremony. This is a kind of strange event. These ceremonies this year have taken on the aspect similar to a TV show of the 1950s. First of all, we have to start on time because there's a remote audience, and we always like to start a little late. And you're not sure who the right audience is. The people watching comfortably at home, going to get something to eat or drink, you're not sure whether the medium of communication is one of person to person or a much cooler medium of communication, which is over a screen. I want to thank everyone who organized this event, Deborah Pemstein, Jane Bryan, Molly for stepping in, for all the faculty and staff, and those of you who are here, there are a few of you here, and your identities are concealed because you're masked, so I really don't know who you are, but I assume you have a reason for being here. And you experience something that we all have experienced here this year, which is that one thing we've learned from this pandemic, there is no technological surrogate for the human act of teaching, learning, and communicating. Those of you who tune in to the traditional commencement concert will realize how unbelievable it has been for the students on stage to play remotely without eye contact. It's not only the social distancing, it's the mask and the suppression of human interchange, trust, recognition, affection, consternation. The toll it has taken on people is underestimated. So I'm here partly to say how proud I am of all the members of the Bard community, faculty particularly, students particularly, and staff who have allowed this college to continue and to thrive remotely, but in person. We've had a community of nearly 2,000 people on this campus for the entire pandemic. We have a minuscule number of positive results. People have been safe. The people who run the college, the B&G, the environmental services, the staff, the support staff, and the faculty have managed to keep everything safe and clean and suppressing any danger. The student body has behaved in an exemplary manner. The young people who will graduate from the undergraduate college tomorrow have achieved something that's unbelievable, really. The public likes to think of the college-age community as being dangerous, exemplary of all the things that either people wish they did when they were in college, or actually did do and do not want to tell their children about. So it's a kind of a hotbed of danger. And when the pandemic arrived, that mode of thinking was transferred to college campuses. And some, fell right into the trap. Those with fraternities, with a sense of what college is that is not what happens in the studio or the classroom. Our students behaved in a remarkable way. They adhered voluntarily to protocols. We were not swamped with disciplinary issues that had to do with not following the rules. The quality and maturity of the student body was exemplary. My job, partly in this ceremony over the years of the history of the college, is to give you a brief update of what's happened. Clearly, making it through the pandemic without a deficit and with a lively academic year was an achievement all its own. I also want to say that we have a banner entering class in the fall, probably the largest in the college's history. And both for the pandemic safety and for the entering class, 2 administrators who are graduates of the college bear the responsibility. It's Malia Dumont from the class of '95, who was the driving force of the response team for COVID, and Mackie Siebens, who is the director of admissions. That the college operated in the black is also a credit to another alumnus, and that's Ton Toy, who's the chief financial officer. The fact that we have a fantastic building and grounds and about to present developments for the new campus is the work of Colleen Alexander, who is also an alumna of the college. And 2 of our signature programs that did fantastically well, the Bard Prison Initiative, which also opened a 3rd micro-college in Harlem, and is resuming work in June and managed to keep the program alive despite the lockdown in our prisons. Max Kenner is an alumnus, and the Bard High School early colleges have flourished. And they actually have gone back to in-person schooling, and will have commencements in real time and real place, and with attendance in Washington and Baltimore and Cleveland. And the credit there goes to Stephen Tremaine and the academic head of it, Dumaine Williams, who is also the vice president for student affairs, also both of them graduates. We actually have to stop hiring graduates, but it's a tribute to the quality of the student body, past and present. The college is at a historic juncture. It was always poor and complained about its poverty. And people always said about it that, nice as it was, it wouldn't last. It was a place that had a history of ups and downs, but the downs were sharper than in most institutional histories. People used to say the college was born in 1860, but John Bard died in 1893 with debts. That was his bequest. And right after the First World War, the college had a shaky moment. Then it had a shaky moment right before the Depression, let alone after the Depression, at which point Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt decided the way to solve it is to give Bard to somebody else. And they made it part of Columbia University. Then in the war, Second World War, there were no students. It was an all-men's college. And Bard had said, you can't admit women. So instead of being closed, it decided to pull out independently and admit women. So the first class of women, which graduated in '48, was a milestone. The problem is that the Bard trustees at the time, being honorable people, accepted the idea that they owed Columbia all the money that Columbia had spent keeping it alive in the 30s and 40s. Sort of back rent, which had never been agreed to. What they should have done, but that they were too well brought up, was simply to say no, but they didn't. And in exchange, Columbia took ownership of the land. And then in the 1950s, it almost closed. And 59. In fact, there was a piece, I believe, in the New Yorker that predicted its closure. But then the Episcopal Church came to the rescue, and they brought in Remer Klein, who laid the foundation of the modern Bard. An Episcopal priest who had grown up on the Middlebury campus. He had a certain ideal of what a college should be like, and he worked tirelessly on the college's behalf through the 60s. But it was tuition-driven, and the demography went down, and the college became financially unstable, just at the point as they were trying to hire a new president. So they offered it to a series of people who really deserved the job, who looked at the balance sheet and said, it's too risky. I have a family, I'm in mid-career, how can I possibly take this job? And out of desperation, they hired me. And they really had no other choice. I don't think there was great enthusiasm. I think David Schwab, who has been elected today as a life trustee at our board meeting, hoped somehow this would work out, and his partner in crime, Bill Ruger from the class of 40, thought, it can't get any worse. But I understood that there had to be something done about the finances, and they hired me because I knew how to do a transaction, a sort of loophole transaction, the kind of thing that smart tax lawyers figure out. I learned it by accident through ignorance. And that was a loophole in the Farmers Home Administration that could provide a not-for-profit loans to get itself out of debt. And I had done that transaction in New Hampshire. That's why they hired me. And I began doing it here, only to discover that we didn't own our land. The trustees themselves didn't know that they didn't own the 30 acres of the center of the campus. So we bought it back from Columbia. Columbia didn't give it to us, they sold it to us. And then began an attempt at reconstruction. And we had our ups and downs. And the college has done extremely well, led by ideas and by risk. The faculty deserves the credit for putting up with ideas of their own making and other people's makings. Some did work, some didn't. Going into graduate education, going into international education, expanding the arts, reaching out into the connection between education and social justice. These were all experiments, most of which did well, some did brilliantly. And it began to attract the support of people who were not alumni, not parents, not related to the so-called inner family of the college. And I'm pleased to say that over the years we were able to build new buildings, provide much more financial aid, and develop a spirit that recruited fantastic faculty members and staff members, some of whom are retiring today and whom we'll honor. First-class people who could have taught anywhere, but there was something about the place that attracted them. And I'm pleased to report something which has been reported in the press, that the college, for the first time in its history, although it has operated in the black for 45 years, by the skin of its teeth. You know, I know nothing about sports, but I'm told that a touchdown in football has the same value whether it's an inch or a mile. It can't be a mile, but you understand the comparison. So after operating without an endowment for many, many years, its entire life, we got an endowment challenge, which was reported in the press, of $500 million from George Soros and the Open Society Foundations, for which I'm enormously grateful. and we were given 5 years to match it. If we don't raise 500 million, the money wouldn't be ours. And then, very generously, the foundation and Mr. Soros said, if you reach the 250 million mark, half, you can begin to get the income of our portion of it as if it were an endowment. And then when you reach the 500 million mark, you get the whole amount, and the college ends up with $1 billion of endowment. Now, if you think that's a lot of money, you have to remember that it yields, as an endowment, $50 million. And the budget we approved today at the board meeting has over $60 million in financial aid, in scholarships for needy students. So there's not a lot of extra money there, but it's the minimum endowment to sustain the college, $1 billion. Well, given the challenge for a one-to-one match, the question was, how could we raise the remaining portion? And as of today, I'm pleased to say that the college, the trustees, and the benefactors of the college, not Mr. Soros, not the authors of the challenge, but the rest of the community, just the leadership, has contributed and committed $312 million to that match in a matter of months. That means we have a little less than $190 million to go, and we will meet that match by the end of this calendar year. The good news is the requirement was very generous. Some of it will come in cash, some of it are bequests, mostly of older people, and some are timed gifts. The foundation and Mr. Soros were satisfied with irrevocable commitments, commitments that can't be changed, but therefore are real obligations. And so I think we will hit the $1 billion mark by the end of December. That permits us to move to the next front, which is to improve this campus, both in terms of its landscape, its environmental innards, if you will, its sustainability, to renovate many buildings on campus, on Montgomery Place, Blythewood, Ward Manor, the older historic buildings, but also to essentially invest about $150 million in new construction. So in addition to finishing the $1 billion endowment, we voted today to authorize the raising of money and the beginning of capital projects. They include a new studio building near here, which will replace the Spiegel tent, which was a performance space. It'll be a performance space and studio, primarily for dance and theater, on the other side of the parking lots here. A new 250 apartment house-style dormitory facility with recreational facilities and some teaching facilities, right at the edge of the field as you leave along Robbins and Manor, that will have space for slightly more than 250 students, that also will be usable all year long. In the summer as a rental, there'll be apartment-style facilities. And then we're going to build, in addition to the library, which is really for study and electronically wired, not for book storage, but for the communal study that's part of being at a university or college. Studying by yourself in a room is productive for some of the time, but seeing other students. I would have been asleep most of the time as an undergraduate if I weren't forced to study with other people and was too embarrassed to fall asleep over the book. So it's an important part of being a university and college student. And that library facility will be the same design as exists now. It was originally planned when the so-called new library was built. A science facility, a digital science facility that will have mathematics, physics, and an open science literacy lab really 3 stories of science-related teaching space. That will be in the corner between Hageman and Rose. A new field house, which it will be near the Stevenson Gymnasium, and new tennis courts. And I think those are the new buildings, the studio building, field house, the new library, and a dormitory, and the physics building. We also will build a new building on the Montgomery Place site of the Visitor Center, which was an ugly thing that was built by Historic Hudson Valley 20 years ago. And that will house BPI and the micro-colleges and be a visitor center for Montgomery Place. So on this eve of this commencement, I'm pleased to announce that the trustees have committed themselves to this capital campaign, all told, of somewhere around $1.2 billion, almost $1.3 billion capital campaign, which includes a $1 billion endowment for Bard, a $50 million endowment for Simon's Rock, which doesn't qualify for the match, and a little over $200 million of new construction and renovation. So it's a new day for Bard. I hope we have all of the construction and all of the fundraising done in the next 5 years. And I want to thank everyone, Jonathan Becker in particular, for shepherding the international programs. As you know, we're in Russia and in the West Bank. We're partners of the largest Israeli Arab high school in Lod, where there was a lot of violence in the last weeks. We have difficulties in Russia, having to do with the politics of Russia. We represent really the forefront of international collaboration and cooperation in education. So I think all of you and all of us have a lot to be proud of about the college. The one warning I would give you all is just because we're no longer legitimately poor, we should not suddenly become fearful and imitate all those very wealthy, smug, insular, private institutions of higher education that have failed, despite their wealth, to contribute to the quality of education and to the connection between education and democracy. I'm particularly proud of the early colleges and what they do and what opportunities they provide in the major urban centers of the East Coast. And so tuition-free college of a very high quality. So be proud of your alma mater, those of you who are alumni, those of you who are soon to be alumni, and anyone else who's randomly watching this, that this is just not an ordinary college, despite our affection for the traditions that inhabit every college. Pride in one's family and a kind of allegiance which is not always rational. Your allegiance to Bard is completely rational. We will have a commencement tomorrow. We'll honor a whole series of honorary degree recipients. My friend Patrick Gaspard, who will be the commencement speaker, Miriam Berger, Mimi Berger, long-time active participant in alumni affairs, the class of '56, William Darity, Michael Mann, Audra McDonald, who happens to be a BSEC parent, Siddhartha Mukherjee, Vivian Nixon, and Elif Shafak. I want to thank the leadership of the Alumni Association, and I'm pleased to say that there are going to be some remote reunions, I think, for the first time. Is that right? In June, which may be a prelude to non-remote reunions next year. We're going to try to offer the class of 21 and 20 a chance to have their own weekend with housing on campus next June. And we really look forward to the return of social life. People always say, well, we have to come out of the pandemic and we shouldn't go back. Yes, we could improve things, but the fundamental reality with which we lived, not fearing the person next to you, going to the theater, going to a rally, the polarization in our culture is exacerbated by the isolation and fragmentation which the pandemic has forced on us. Let's not turn it into a virtue. Let's celebrate the return to the normal pleasures, delights, and inspirations of human contact. So it's my pleasure to now introduce remotely, I think. Is that right? The chairman of our board, fantastically generous and sharp-minded, articulate alumnus whom I've known probably every day I have served here at Bard, because he entered as a freshman when I was first here as a president, my friend and our leader, Jim Chambers.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jim. Good evening. As all of you know, Bard is a laboratory of creativity and independence. I welcome all of you to the Bard Awards tonight, where several of my friends, colleagues, and allies are being justly honored. You and all the other awardees are rock star beasts for the good of our planet. I salute you, I thank you, I congratulate you all, and I hope that everyone here has a lovely night, a magnificent weekend. And now I pass the mic to my longtime colleague and running buddy, Molly McEvoy. Go Raptors.
Wow, well, thank you, Jim. We miss you here tonight, and thank you, Leon and Jane, and to my dear friend Casey, who cannot be with us tonight. As everyone's mentioned, I'm Molly McEvoy, class of 2003, and the Vice President of the Board of Governors, and I'm here to let you know that the presentation of the awards will now begin, and I will call attention that the full citations are in tonight's programs and contain more information about this year's recipients. I will start now. I call upon Brandon Weber, class of 1997, and trustee of the college, and Dumaine Williams, class of 2003, and vice president for student affairs and dean of the early colleges, to come forward with the recipient of the Bard Medal.
I have the honor of introducing Charles S. Johnson III, class of 1970, and trustee of the college, who will receive the Bard Medal, the Bard College Alumni Association's highest award.
We celebrate you, Charles Johnson, with Bard's highest honor, the Bard Medal, in recognition of your service as a trustee, and particularly your advocacy of Bard's early colleges. Yours has been a voice of idealism and reason in support of Bard's mission to link education to social justice. Your service to Bard has been consistent with your exceptional contributions to the cause of equity and justice for all, particularly in your home community of Atlanta.
So I'm grateful to the Alumni Association for this singular honor. Many of us think of higher education as a powerful tool for changing the trajectory of people's lives. But is that always the case? Now, the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, which I chair, recently set out to test this hypothesis. It sought to identify which Georgia colleges launched the most students from the lower 60% of household incomes to the upper 40% of household incomes. And out of the top 10 performers identified in this study, 6 of those colleges were public, 4 were private, but 7 of them, 7 of the top 10, were historically black colleges or universities. Now, even before the study began, I could have at least come close to predicting that the study would produce this kind of finding, having spent much of my life heavily steeped in HBCU culture. I've long known the role these institutions play as engines of economic mobility. What I could not have predicted when I was a student at Bard in the late 60s was the extent to which Bard College would come to embrace a similar mobility mission. And to me, that's a justice issue. They've embraced this mission, for example, through the institutional aid policy. And most institutions of higher learning have some sort of institutional aid, but Bard's policy has a rigorous focus on the issue of student need. Then there's the prison initiative, which provides a degree pathways that wouldn't otherwise exist, largely for incarcerated individuals, but for others who would not otherwise have those pathways. And then there are the early colleges, which address the issue of college access by dramatically reducing the cost of a degree. So in an era that is characterized by growing income inequality, it just feels good. It feels good to be associated with an institution that is really doing more than its part to create pathways to upward mobility. And so I'm proud to be associated with what Walter Becker and Don Fagan referred to as my old school, and I'm grateful for this singular recognition. Thank you.
I now call upon Betsy Eli, class of 1965, and life trustee of the college, and Mike Tibbetts, professor of biology, to bring forward the recipient of the John and Samuel Bard Award in Medicine and Science.
You did not choose the easy paths offered by medicine. Instead, you tackled difficult diseases that are endemic to the most disadvantaged populations of our cities. You've shown exemplary devotion to the highest ideals of medicine as an activist and scientist. We take pride in you as a Bard alumna.
Thank you all for being here or watching virtually. I want to thank Leon and the Board of Governors for nominating me for this award. I am deeply honored. I would also like to thank the trustees of the college, especially Jim Chambers, for their leadership, and all the faculty and staff who make Bard what it is. I'd also like to thank Jane and her colleagues in the Alumni Association to keeping people like me connected to the college. So I was not necessarily a typical Bard student. I came here as a local from Hyde Park, which is just down the street, in 1996 to study chemistry. And actually, I was given a full tuition scholarship to study chemistry at Bard, and I am truly grateful for that scholarship and want to thank the donors that continue to make those scholarships happen. Now, many people thought studying chemistry at a school that traditionally was known for its arts and literature was kind of unusual. But actually, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I have had. The experience was made wonderful because of the collaborations I had with my friends who were artists and filmmakers, photographers, and thinkers. When I was at Bard, I made non-toxic goo in the chemistry lab for one of my friends' horror films. Fascinated by my chemistry homework, I had a friend in the art department who decided to make a large wooden installation art piece that was shaped after organic chemistry molecules that I had drawn. And also, I, to one friend, gave them chemicals from our chemistry staff because they wanted to learn how to develop their 16mm film all by themselves. Bard students are passionate about what they do, and they are great collaborators. And it is really this merger of art and art and science that led me to decide to study medicine. As a doctor, you not only need to be an expert in the science of the human body, you need to be an expert in listening to the stories of your patients, the literature of their lives, and you truly need to believe that each individual life is its own poetry, its own art. These are the skills that make you be a good doctor, and these are the skills I got at Bard. Now, what I do currently as a physician, when it's not a pandemic, although I'll get there, is that I am a clinician, I'm a researcher, and I'm a teacher who specifically works with people who use and inject drugs. One of the greatest honors of my career has been to establish a medical clinic within a drop-in center of a syringe exchange program that serves East Harlem and the Bronx. People who use drugs are some of the most marginalized and stigmatized people in our society. And because of this, it makes it extremely difficult for them to access health care through traditional systems. As such, I wanted to bring healthcare to them. Now, when I first came up with this idea of starting this clinic, there were many doubters. There were people who said that did not believe that the tenets of traditional healthcare aligned with the principles of harm reduction or syringe exchange. But what Bard taught us was never to think traditionally, to always think outside the box. And I took those skills, and me and my colleagues, after months, convinced the executives at Montefiore Medical Center that ignoring, or at best, serving poorly, a population in our community just because they use drugs was certainly against the mission of our institution. I am now happy to say, 3 years later, that we provide health care, and not just health care, but expert, academic, world-class health care to people who use drugs on site at a syringe exchange program. And they now access health care in which they would never have gotten without the clinic starting. So I am proud of Montefiore for partnering with me in opening this clinic. I am proud of Bard for giving me the confidence and the creativity to think outside the box. And mostly I am proud of my patients who use drugs and have taught me the utmost humility, and that every single person deserves to live a life with the most dignity and the most health that they can possibly live. Now, obviously, I would be amiss if I did not bring up the global pandemic as a physician, and the many, many months that I and my colleagues spent treating COVID patients in the hospital over the last year. New York City was the epicenter of the beginning of this pandemic, but the Bronx, where I practice medicine, was hit the hardest. Montefiore Medical Center had to open nearly 20 new hospital wards to accommodate the hundreds of patients that were showing up with COVID to the hospital. I personally was put on what was supposedly a non-COVID ward, but every single one of my patients were COVID positive. We watched our community and our patients struggle to breathe, even with oxygen. We watched people die without their family members. I personally watched young doctors break down, and I watched those same young doctors step up to do their absolute best to save lives, even when we did not have the tools early on to do it as well as we wanted. I think it would be amiss, however, to not state that the inequities that the Bronx held during this pandemic were not due to the legacy of structural racism in this country. Our patients are primarily people of color, Black, brown, and indigenous people who were our essential workers. Our patients were our mail carriers, our UPS workers. They worked in delis and bodegas and supermarkets. They were the undocumented immigrants who never received good health care in their lives. They were people living in food deserts that have led to an epidemic of obesity and diabetes. And they were people living in areas that, because of environmental racism, they have extreme pollutants that have led to higher rates of asthma and pulmonary disease. It is these reasons that we watched our community, our colleagues, many of our friends die disproportionately than most of the other parts of the country. And so, as this pandemic hopefully subsides, I hope that all of us, no matter what field we work in, can truly commit to dismantling racism and all stigmas, so that physicians can not only use science to keep people living, but that those lives are lived with the most dignity, equity, and fulfillment that can be possible for each person. Thank you.
I call upon Leon Botstein, president of the college, and Hannah Barrett, director of the Milton Avery Graduate School, to present tonight's recipient of the Charles Flint Kellogg Award in Arts and Letters.
I have the honor of introducing Paul Chan, Milton Avery Graduate School of the Arts class of 2003, who will receive the Charles Flint Kellogg Award in Arts and Letters, given in recognition of significant contributions to the American artistic or literary heritage. Paul Chan is not able to be with us this evening and is instead joining us by video.
We honor you, Paul Chan, with the Kellogg Award as one of the most eminent multidisciplinary artists working today. Your remarkable output of video, book publishing, kinetic sculpture, and writing is startling, unsettling, and inspiring. Your accomplishments as an artist and defender of the arts underscore the arts as an indispensable component of freedom and justice. You exemplify the ideals of Bard's Milton Avery Graduate School of the Arts.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this award. I really do appreciate it. The honor is certainly undeserved, and not only because I'm an artist of questionable merit. You see, the truth is, I never wanted to go to the Bard MFA. I was living in New York at the time, making work, and living off of terrible, terrible part-time jobs. Surviving was my school. older and wiser friends convinced me to get an advanced degree. So I relented and applied for and got into the Bard MFA program. I didn't have much, if any, school spirit, so to speak. I was prepared to drop out at every turn. But I never did. It was because of the teachers. There was Peggy Alwish, who told me she didn't run a film video department, but a halfway house for misfits. Lynn Tillman, who taught me the idea of artistic freedom, of which I have never forgotten. Yvonne Rayner, who showed me what it means to endure as an artist. George Lewis, Mark Alice Durant, Dana Hoey, Bob Balecki, Eileen Miles, Cecilia Doherty, Amy Silman, Michael Jew, Les Levesque. All great artists in their own right, who took the time and energy to nurture and challenge me in equal measure. It seems to me this award belongs to them. I would have never found my own footing if I didn't stand on their shoulders. I would like to especially pass on this award to 3 iconic artists who are no longer with us. The singular and uncompromising composer, Marianne McEvoy, who passed away in 2009. The pioneering Carolee Schneemann, who died in 2019. And lastly, artist and musician Barbara S., who just left us this past March. This award is for them. I look forward to working with the Bard Awards Committee to officially transfer the Charles Flint Kellogg Award in Arts and Letters to their names. I'm more than happy to call the engravers myself and to ask them to make room for all these names to be etched onto the big gold trophy that I imagine you were planning to mail me for this award. I hope it's not too late to do this. But then again, I think it's never too late to remember what has been lost as a reminder of what it takes to go on. Thank you again.
I now call upon Betsy Eli, class of 1965 and life trustee of the college, and Brooke Jude, associate professor of biology, to bring forward the John Dewey Award for distinguished public service.
I have the honor of introducing Nsikan Akpan, class of 2006, who will receive the John Dewey Award for Distinguished Public Service, which was established in 1990 to recognize extraordinary contributions by Bard alumni and others to the public sector or in the public interest.
We honor you, Nsikan Akpan, for your voice in the struggle to vanquish one of the most daunting challenges to democracy in the 21st century, the mistrust of science and the misunderstanding of what science is and does. Your writings, podcasts, broadcasts, and video productions have earned you prominence as one of the most influential and respected voices, as someone uniquely capable of building bridges between the scientific community and the general public.
This is overwhelming. I felt overwhelmed when I first heard about it, and I am overwhelmed now. I want to start by thanking the trustees of the college and everyone involved with granting this award today.
As the program mentions, I used to work at PBS NewsHour, where Gwen Eiffel was the longtime co-host and who sadly passed away from cancer a few years ago. I think as many people know, Gwen was a rock star in news media, and she worked tirelessly to inform the public and to hold leaders to account. Despite her busy schedule, she rarely, if ever, said no to speaking events at public schools around town in Washington, D.C., and she really wanted to mentor the next generation of journalists. And I've really tried to emulate her since I had the experience to work with her. And I tried to say yes to speaking in classrooms whenever possible. I've had a unique journey to becoming a journalist, and one of the first questions that students often ask me is why I switched from being a researcher to a journalist. And I always start by bringing up Bard College and how it emphasized the importance of solid writing and communication, even in its science courses. Nowhere was that more apparent than in the genetics courses led by my thesis advisor, Michael Tibbetts. He would hold these exams where we had to write essay-based answers, and I remember receiving a less than optimal grade on my first one. Unfortunately, there are no records, but I can just say that it was somewhere between an A and above an F. And I'm grateful for that experience because it taught me the value of communicating science clearly, which has underpinned both my careers in academia and public media. So I really want to thank Michael for pushing me, and I want to give him a round of applause for everything that he's done. And I wouldn't be here without him. I also want to thank Valerie Thompson, John Ferguson, Felicia Keesing, Sven Anderson, Bob Grail, and all the scientific and academic mentors that I had at Bard, and also to Brooke for keeping me connected to the community over these past years. I want to express my gratitude to Simon's Rock College, where I spent my first 2 years of college, and my advisors and mentors there, including Emmanuel Dongala, David Myers, Mike Bergman, Bill Dunbar, and Bob Schmidt. Next, there is Jacob Backen, David Valdini, Daniel Pacheco, Frank Antonoff, Rose Lee, Adam Turner, Dylan Citrin, and everyone else associated with Bard Athletics, where I learned the importance of being a team player. And I also want to give a special thanks to Jamie Hooper for taking me to the doctor when I broke a bone in my face during a soccer game. I would like to express my immense love and appreciation to my family away from my family, the Halseys. I met Justin during my first or second day at Simon's Rock and spent almost every Thanksgiving during college with him, Trevor, Mark Halsey, who works here at Bard College, and Joe the Black Mamba, as we say. And I'll never be able to repay them for the support that they showed all those years. Last but certainly not least, I wish my mom was here, but I know that she's watching at home with my sisters and nephews. Thank you for the sacrifices that you made working multiple jobs for decades to make sure that I have an education. I want to thank my wife, Ruth, for all of her loving support, especially during our year trapped at home. And speaking of COVID-19, and the reason that I wanted to express my gratitude to all of these people is that I think the pandemic has reminded us that we are all in this together, and if we stay together, we can overcome anything. So thank you.
I now call upon Leon Botstein and Dina Nagensu, Professor of Written Arts, to present the recipient of the Mary McCarthy Award.
I have the honor of introducing Claudia Rankine, who will receive the Mary McCarthy Award, given in recognition of engagement in the public sphere by an intellectual, artist, or writer. Claudia Rankine is unable to join us this evening and is instead joining by video.
We recognize you, Claudia Rankine, with Bard's highest honor in the fields of literature and writing. This award was named for Mary McCarthy, who taught at Bard and was devoted to this college. Your work mirrors the full range and beauty of McCarthy's prose. You have traversed the realms of fiction and nonfiction. Like McCarthy, you have been fearless in confronting the central ethical and political issues facing our contemporary world.
Good evening. I really am sorry I wasn't able to join everyone, but I'm here in the way that I can be. So thank you, technology. I want to begin by actually congratulating the graduates who have done the unthinkable and survived the unimaginable in the past year. You should feel proud of your resilience, your excellence, your creative resistance to the highly organized fascism that resides just behind the door of our future. In the past years of chaos and disregard, and the past year and a half of the pandemic, there were so many people doing great work in this historical moment of reckoning. So I am humbled to be receiving the Mary McCarthy Award. I'm truly honored to be considered inside the tradition of her bold and uncompromising work. And I have to say that that tradition has shown itself in the youth in ways that cannot be matched by the pen at present. And that also humbles me. And that, you know, those are the communities that make up campuses like Bard's. So I thank those people too. I also thank the entire Bard community and the Alumni Association. The invitation said to talk about yourself, and I don't really have much to say about myself, but I wanted to, in this week of the anniversary of George Floyd's murder, read a piece that I wrote a year ago. It's a poem, it's not too long. And it was written for that moment and hopefully for the moments to come. It's entitled Weather. On a scrap of paper in the archive is written, I have forgotten my umbrella. Turns out in a pandemic, everyone, not just the philosopher, is without. We scramble in the drought of information held back by inside traders, drop by drop, face covering, no, yes, social distancing, 6 feet under for underlying conditions, Black, just us, and the blues kneeling on a neck with the full weight of a man in blue. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. In extremis, I can't breathe, gives way to asphyxiation, to giving up this world. And then Mama, a call to protest, fire, glass, say their names, say their names. White silence equals violence, the violence of again. A militarized police force tear gassing, bullets ricochet, and civil unrest taking it, burning it down, whatever. Contracts keep us social, compel us now to disorder the disorder. Peace. We're out to repair the future. There's an umbrella by the door, not for yesterday, but for the weather that's here. I say weather, but I mean a form of governing that deals out death and names it living. I say weather, but I mean a November that won't be held off. This time, nothing, no one forgotten. We are here for the storm that's storming because what's taken matters. And as we all move forward in the future, I want to say, in the spirit of Mary McCarthy, I hope that we find our voice to combat and push back against those, to quote Homi Bhabha, who might not understand that a risk to life is a risk to living. I thank you again for this award.
We now turn to the presentation of Bardian Awards, which are a formalization of the Bard College Alumni Association's tradition of honoring lifetime members of the Bard community. Tonight, we have the pleasure of honoring 3 such colleagues with this award. I call upon Brandon Weber, class of 1997 and trustee of the college, and Maria Q. Simpson, professor of dance, to join us at the podium with Peggy Florin, the first of tonight's Bardian Award recipients.
I have the honor of introducing Peggy Florin, who will receive the Bardian Award.
We thank you, Peggy Florin, by presenting you with a Bardian Award for your decades as a brilliant and committed teacher of dance and choreography. Generations of students are grateful for your teaching and guidance. You opened up the experience of dance as an art form and a component of their process of self-recognition. You charted a path for students to realize their ambitions. Through the task of shaping movement in space, in your hands, dance flourished at Bard as a vital component of the liberal arts.
You get a diploma. So here we don't give a medal, but we actually give a chair or a rocking chair. And this is a rocking chair, and there's something always written on the back of it. And this time it is Peggy Florin, the Bardian Award, May 28th, 2021. And the quote here is, "Here to discover the essential energy needed to move."
Well, I'm hoping that the rocking chair is going to slow me down. And thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for this award. Thank you, Bard, for this award. I first came to Bard as a dancer. I came to the campus as a dancer in performing the work of Albert Reed, who was a professor for many years here of dance. Albert was a beloved teacher, and he taught the Merce Cunningham technique both here at Bard and in New York City at the Merce Cunningham studio. So on my first visit, I met a woman named Jean Churchill, and I remember walking with her through the glorious fields of Bard and thinking, what an interesting person this is. And now, 36 years later, she is still interesting. Some years later, when Albert retired, I was invited to come to Bard to teach ballet. At the time, I was working also at Bennington College, but my involvement at Bard grew over several years to become a full-time commitment, luckily for me. And what these two schools have in common, what these two dance programs have in common, is a foundational structure, beloved really among us, I think, called Dance Workshop, a weekly event that provides a creative educational center for all dance action within the programs. A place for showing work in progress, for discussing work, for giving feedback. And this has always been extremely important to me. For me, investigating and creating new movement have been ways to research, to think about, to experience myself within the world. Dance, or simply movement, can be a way of knowing the world. And I'm increasingly fascinated by the ways we move through the world as individuals. And beyond this personal act of grounding, the experience of moving within a group, whatever form that can take, whether it be a ballet class or an improv session or the collaborative challenge of making work, of choreography. This is a truly dynamic way of creating community. And a dance program within a liberal arts environment, such as we have at Bard, invites young people into an experience of open but rigorous research into essential questions, personal questions, cultural questions, political questions, questions of body and mind. And importantly, invites them to use their whole selves in the process of answering those questions. For this, I am forever grateful. I made a lot of dances over my years here, and sharing the creative process with students has been an essential part of the experience. The most revealing, generative moments of teaching have been in the choreographic studio for me. These are often precious teaching moments, moments of transmission. And this transmission is mutual, for as we teachers well know, the learning goes both ways. And teaching is an inherently creative endeavor. So I want to thank my students, my colleagues, and collaborators for sharing the joys, the tedium, and the mystery of all of this with such patience and interest and generosity. The dance program is in very good hands with the leadership of Maria Simpson and the wonderful dance faculty. And I look forward to seeing what growth and energy that the next years bring. Thank you so much, Bard, for this award.
I now call upon Betsy Eli, class of 1965 and life trustee of the college, and Ellen Driscoll, Professor of Studio Arts, to join us at the podium with Medrie MacPhee, our second Bardian Award recipient.
I have the honor of introducing Medrie MacPhee, who will receive the Bardian Award.
We honor you, Andrew McPhee, as an artist and a teacher. Nothing could be more important to Bard than the visual arts, and within the visual arts, painting. You've been a role model for countless students. Your inspired work, visible in innumerable exhibitions, has been a beacon. Through your teaching, students were permitted to witness what it means to live the life of a productive artist with ambition and integrity, and remain generous to students in the studio classroom. You have done all this with an unerring sense of humor.
Medrie. So Medrie gets a chair, it doesn't rock, but it said Medrie MacPhee, the Bardian Award, May 28th, 2021, and the quote is from Adrian Rich, and it reads, "Our raft," that must be you, "among the abstract worlds."
Thanks, Leon. Teaching at Bard for the past 25 years has deeply enriched my life. I've made lasting friendships with people, both inside and outside my department, and a number of my former students. Artists spend a good portion of their time alone in a room, trying to ferret out what they're doing. Teaching art, with all of its intellectual and material challenges, has provided a powerful symbiosis. Having taught in many other programs before, finding my home at Bard made clear that our undergraduate department is exceptional. I've always been proud and appreciative to be associated with this singular institution that President Botstein has helped to create, and its many initiatives far and wide whose core values reflect my own. We don't always get it right, but there's an intense and ongoing effort to evolve and move ahead. I'd like to thank Ellen Driscoll for her incredible dedication, imagination, and leadership during the time that she has been here. I'm especially proud of the VFL grant that she spearheaded that provides monetary support for students who otherwise might not be able to afford art classes. Lastly, a special shout out to my dear friend Marina Van Zulen. Marina provided me with a lovely place to stay, fed me, and often sometimes clothed me over the past 15 years. You're the best. Thank you very much.
I now call upon Brandon Weber, class of 1997, and trustee of the college, to present our third and last Bardian recipient.
I now have the honor of directing your attention to the screen for Matthew Deedy, Professor Emeritus of Physics, to present our final Bardian Award to Amie McEvoy.
My apologies. We honor you, Amie McEvoy, for being the rock upon which much of Bard College has stood for 4 decades, making sure that what should happen did and that what shouldn't happen didn't. Amie came as an administrative assistant to the president and assumed new responsibilities as needed with no decrease in overall effectiveness. official functions of the college happened as well as they did due to her careful attention to detail and procedure. Countless campus programs benefited from her oversight. We will miss her ability to remain unflustered under duress, her respect for coworkers at all times, and her daily acts of human kindness as we strive to meet the example she set. Amie McEvoy.
So Amie understands these rituals probably better than anyone else in the room. And so on her chair says Amie McEvoy, the Bardian Award, May 28th, 2021. And to Amie, quote, whose advice was so effectual, possessed a strength of understanding and a coolness of judgment. You get the citation.
I have no prepared remarks. I came to Bard, this is going to be really brief, in May of 1981. It's 40 years this week. On the day of the last faculty meeting of the spring semester, and on the Saturday of commencement in that particular year, the Milton and Sally Avery Center for the Arts was dedicated. So there was a whole ceremony in the morning and then the commencement ceremony in the afternoon. And I was given to understand that working at Bard, actually for Leon Botstein, would be trial by fire. But those trials by fire are expected to come to a conclusion. And it pretty much continued throughout. It's been quite a ride. It's been a good ride, though. And I'm glad that I was here, and I'm very, very glad that I have been able to make some sort of contribution to this place, which is truly miraculous. The workshop, the L&T, the workshop in Writing and Thinking had not even yet begun. The MFA program had not yet begun. The relationship between Bard and Simon's Rock was still in the finalization process. The MFA program was, I believe, was being planned at that point. It hadn't yet begun. And now look, it's quite extraordinary, and I'm proud to have been a part of it. Thank you.
I think you have closing remarks. Closing remarks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I have the pleasure of bringing this evening to a close. I want to, first of all, congratulate all the award recipients. In Brianna's case, it's even a family affair. She has a hidden relative who's a member of the faculty. And I want to say to Charles Johnson in particular that he's modest about the very distinguished family from which he comes. His grandfather was a distinguished sociologist and the first black president of a historically black college. And I think he may have somehow osmotically gained the sense of idealism and the belief in education. And I want to say to all the sponsors that I thank you for participating. We had every possible iteration. We had a remote presenter and a remote receiver. And to my colleagues who are retiring, I want to say that I don't believe in retirement. So but I do understand your desire to open a new phase in your own lives. And I do think that teaching is one of the few secure connections to immortality, because whatever you did for your students, or whatever your students remember, the memory of Michael Tibbetts, for example, those memories are exaggerated with time. They're rarely diminished. And they grow from parent to child. And your names and your work will live on longer than that of many people. Teaching the oral tradition of memory and retelling of the experience of having discovered something through teaching is one of the dearest in our hearts and one of the most consistent. So have no fear, you will not be forgotten. Molly, I want to thank you for hosting this. I was terribly scared that Amie would tell many tales out of school, and I want to thank her for her discretion. And to everyone who's been present, thank you for coming. There is a concert by undergraduates, supported by the Orchestra Now this evening. And then tomorrow there is the video of senior projects, which will be, I think, at 11, which replaces the in-person presentation. And then commencement at 2:30. Again, it will be a mixed affair, part remote, part in real time and real place. And I want to thank everyone here today, and have a very nice weekend, nice evening, and we'll see most of you tomorrow.